I was having a conversation with a gentleman in the gym, and I went on a little bit of a rant and was probably definitely giving this guy an ear beating. And but it was a good conversation. What we were talking about was training methodology, training for function versus training for aesthetics. And this guy just happened to be somebody who had done some bodybuilding competitions, and basically, kind of what I was saying was, if you are pursuing the function, training for a function, the aesthetic will follow. Okay. And that competitive bodybuilding scene, or like fitness modeling, that's the only place where function and aesthetic are gonna be one and the same. Where the function is to look a certain way, to look as aesthetically pleasing as possible. But outside of that, that's not going to be the case. If you think of like a competitive male gymnast at the highest level, or female gymnast, either way, at the high level, they're not concerned with their aesthetic. They're just concerned with being the best that they can be. But coincidentally, they all look the same. They're all built, pretty much the same. Like, absolutely jacked. Those, Olympic male gymnasts looking like a hairless chimp. They have that aesthetic. The aesthetic follows the training because they're all training the same way. They're all doing the same thing. If they were, concerned with their aesthetic, or wanting someone's opinion on, hey, how do I look? Like, well, bud, you look like somebody who can handle a pommel horse. And that's a very specific, it's a very niche thing, right? But they're training for a function specifically, and that aesthetic follows. If your goal is the other way around, if your goal is an aesthetic, and I want to look like a swimmer, I want to have a swimmer's body, but I don't really like to swim that much. That's not how I want to achieve it. Like, well, then you're probably not going to be that successful. I mean, you may not have Michael Phelps genetics, but if your goal is the function, if your goal is, hey, I want to be a stronger swimmer, so you're out there swimming all the time, you're probably going to see physical changes. The aesthetic's going to follow. You'll have that powerful upper body and probably start to see more of that V taper, because you're pursuing that function. And, in my own training years ago, the focus was on powerlifting. And I just wanted to be, as strong and as powerful, and push myself in that way. So, powerlifters, they don't care much about the aesthetic. They don't care what they look like. They're, as a result of that training, you're going to have the tree trunk legs and a really strong core, wide back, barrel chest. But powerlifters aren't afraid to carry a little bit of extra fat. And, but they're training a certain way. As a result, they're going to look a certain way. But conversely, if you're saying, hey, I want to look like a power lifter, but you're not going to bench squat or deadlift, you're probably not going to achieve that aesthetic. Now I'd say my focus has definitely shifted, looking more at longevity and joint health, and actually having a connection with my food, with my nutrition, and going out and getting really powerful organic red meat, going out and hunting it myself. And it was a wake-up call a few years ago. I thought I was in pretty good shape, but I'm out in the mountains, getting up and down ridge lines, and I'm at altitude, and I'm like, man, struggling to catch my breath, and legs burning. Like, I thought I was in shape, but I wasn't in mountain man shape. I didn't have that functional shape, that functional fitness, not to the level that I wanted anyway. So I had to rethink. I still needed those strong legs, so I am still doing those compound movements, heavy explosive movements, but additionally, I had to have the cardiovascular endurance. I had to have the lungs that were used to really moving at altitude, and moving at altitude carrying a lot of weight sometimes. If you're trying to haul, hundreds of pounds of meat out of the backcountry. And so I bought a weighted vest and started, going up and down mountains to kind of build that. But the aesthetic then changed, the aesthetic, and I wasn't chasing a specific aesthetic, but it definitely changed. But I can function at a very high level at the thing that I want to function at. If your goal is to be the smoking hot neighborhood soccer mom, okay, that's fine, good on you, but what's the function there? If your goal is to have the energy to run around with your kids for a long time and set a good example for your kids with nutrition and exercise, if you're practicing that on a regular basis, all of a sudden, you'll be at those soccer games and the neighborhood dads are all looking, going, man, Sandy is looking like a stallion. What's she doing? What's she got going on? The aesthetic will follow. So think of the function. Think of what you want to do, like on a day-to-day basis, something that's important to you, and how you want to physically be able to do that at a high level. And if you focus on that, the aesthetic will follow. You will look better than you would if you were just specifically orienting yourself towards an aesthetic goal. Yeah. Cheers.